Hi, everybody. I'm very sorry that we're having technical difficulties again. Um, but we're here for the second installment, I guess, of Gender Creative 101. Last week was our first time doing Facebook Live, and I did and will again post this video to my blog. Um, www.gendercreativelife.com, and I'll say it again later in this broadcast as well. But we will put all of our sources and information on there for you to catch up with. So tonight's topic is Gender 101. Who are we? So I figured tonight I would like to introduce you to my wonderful family because they're all here, and I think that a lot of people with good intentions ask about our other two kids because we don't just have Charlie. We have a beautiful daughter who is 14 named Kate, and an awesome son who is 16 named Jack. And we just wanted to put faces with names today. And of course, this is my husband, Matt.
Hi.
So just to introduce ourselves real quick, I kind of went through this last week, but I am Martie Soroy. I am a lifelong North Carolina resident. I am a writer, only recently somewhat professional. I've had a few things that have been published by Huffington Post and Scary Mommy and some other places. I'm an educator, and I'm a mom of three. So, Matt, why don't you tell everybody about you? Just what your background is.
So I'm with her. I come from New England. I moved down here in '95. I packed up my Volkswagen and hit the road after college. Met Marty. We got married a few years later. We have 3 kids now. One dog, 1 cat. And, I'm a call center supervisor, team lead for Amazon.com.
All right. Let's go ahead and we're going to interview our kids first. So we're going to do oldest to youngest. So Jack, why don't you come on over and trade places with Dad? And oh, Curtis, thank you. Hi, Justin, thank you. Love you guys.
Hi.
Okay, so
I love you too.
so this is Jack, my son.
I'm Jack.
All right, and Jack, just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, just a short little.
I'm Jack. I'm 16. I like to play video games like most teenagers. I'm teaching myself to play the guitar, and I'm very accepting of Charlie.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the kids a few questions, and they really haven't had time to prepare, so sorry, but we're going to do this. All right, so Jack, how did you originally feel about Charlie's gender expression?
I mean, I wasn't against it like most people would be, but I did kind of want like a boy, like manly kind of brother, like masculine, and then like later on I just kind of realized like I'll just let him be him because that's what he wants to be. He needs that kind of acceptance. He doesn't need other people to be pushing him to what they want to be, and he shouldn't have to do that either.
Awesome. I agree. So at what point in time do you think that you fully embraced it? The whole gender creativity.
I think I was like 95% all the way up until this one time we were at a restaurant, and it was Charlie's first time, I think, wearing girly clothes out, and there were these 2 boys that walked by him and looked down and then made some comment under their breath and started snickering, and I saw that.
We heard the comment, by the way. We probably won't say what it is here, but it was
and it was
bad.
It was pretty mean. And I looked over at Kate, and my face was like completely red, and Kate's face was completely red. Did you hear that? And I was like, I heard that. And I think at that moment, when we realized what kind of hostility he goes through, I mean, whether it's directly at him or behind his back, I think that's when I fully understood how hard this is for him and that he needs that kind of acceptance in his life.
Yeah. Awesome. What do you think is the social climate like for people in your age group? And like you're at a pretty liberal high school. So with regards to gender identity and gender expression, what is the social climate like for kids your age, the millennials?
Definitely a lot more accepting. I think middle school is kind of that harder time where everyone's trying to figure out where they fit in and whatnot. So people make not the best friend choices and not really the best choices of people to be hanging around with. But definitely once you get into high school, at least for me, I realized that people were a lot more open and accepting, and you get more freedom to really kind of figure out who you are. So I think that like the social climate is just a lot more positive and a lot more better to be in.
And your school has a gay straight alliance, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's very big too.
Awesome. So this gives me hope for the future. Okay, let me ask you this.
Okay.
I'm gonna catch you off guard here. How do you feel about our family in general? Our crazy little family.
I was just gonna say we're crazy. I mean, not like, oh my God, they're crazy. Like the silly crazy, and I do think that we're all very accepting, which is gonna lead to a very good outcome for Charlie and me and Kate. I know that growing up, our parents weren't very harsh and tying down every little thing on us. They gave us a little bit more freedom, and I think that really helped me to become the mature person that I am today, and especially Kate too.
Yes, I agree. So what do you think has it been important to you that we have always been open with communication, like nothing, no topic is taboo or off the table? We have family meetings where we come together and we talk about things that are bothering us. And then we may not have them very often, but I know sometimes that can be awkward and whatnot, but
I mean,
what do you think of all of that?
Even if they are awkward some points in time, I really do think it's important because I know that I never have to fear about having anything about me that I don't want to tell you. I don't feel like I have to hide anything. I feel like I can be open with you guys, and you guys just want to be here to help us and guide us through it. And I think that's great to be able to have that kind of influence and communicating openly. I do think that really helps with growing up into a better person.
I agree, and I'm obviously so proud of all of my kids, just like any good mother is, and I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
And these kids don't, like Jack and Kate don't get kind of the same exposure that Charlie's getting, mostly because they don't want it. So they agreed to be.
No offense, but
they agreed to be here tonight of their own free will and to speak of their own free will, just to show their support. And we wanted to let you get to meet them also. So Jack, there's a question from Curtis. What's a struggle you still feel you deal with when out in public or dealing with society? And is it easier with your family being who they are?
Was that for me?
I think so.
Let me read that again.
A struggle that you still feel that you deal with when out in public.
I mean, nobody ever comes directly at Charlie and says, hey, what you're doing is wrong. So I don't think we have too much, but definitely the looks and comments people make under their breath. It's kind of hard for me. It was very hard for me to see people treating him like that because I've known him for his entire life, and to see somebody saying or acting that way around him, it just kind of hurts. So knowing that it hurts me that much, I can't understand what it must be like for him, and I just feel really bad, and I'll do anything. And I do think that it's easier with my family being who they are, because with them being so open and, like she said, no topic being taboo or anything like that, I think that it's a lot easier to be who we are and figure out who we are, and it makes it a lot easier to deal with these kinds of things.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Jack, thank you so much for being here. He has just gotten off work and changed clothes really fast to come down and do this, so we want to just give you some love, and thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. If something...
Thank you guys, especially you guys. Thank you all for the support. It means a lot.
Yes. Okay. And with that, I will introduce my daughter, Kate, who is 14. She's coming over, and I'm going to ask her kind of the same questions that I asked Jack. This is Kate.
Hi.
Kate and Jack, I forgot to mention, both have done a little theater with me in the past. So that's something that the three of us have done together. So let me back up to my original questions. But Kate, if you would just kind of tell our audience here a little bit about yourself. What do you like to do?
I like to act and stuff. I used to act a lot, and then I did dance for a while, so I don't really know.
And she's a really good dancer.
Thank you.
And a good actor and good at improv, all of that kind of stuff. Anything else you want to say about yourself?
There's nothing really to say.
Well, you're modest. There's a lot of good things to say. All right, so do you want me to just ask you some questions?
Go for it.
Okay, she says go for it. So, how did you originally feel about Charlie wearing princess dresses everywhere all the time, growing up like that?
Because he was because he's a boy and stuff, when he started wearing dresses, I was kind of confused because I was thinking he's a boy, he shouldn't be wearing my clothes. Why is he in my clothes? This is weird. But now I'm more accepting of it and stuff because it's not really just a phase, I guess, because it's not I'm gonna change him about it, and I'm not gonna get upset because of something that he likes. So I'm more accepting of it now, I guess. So.
What do you think got you to that point of being more accepting? Was it what Jack said? I mean, it seems like you guys have always been more supportive than I think you're acknowledging, but I know that maybe there was a definite point in time. Do you think it was that night at the restaurant when you saw the discrimination firsthand?
Yeah, like Jack said, in the restaurant, just seeing those guys walk past Charlie and make that comment, start snickering, I look over to my dad because we were just finishing up eating and stuff, so we were about to leave, and I look over at my dad and at my mom, and I'm like, okay, I'm not leaving until I go over and talk to them and confront them. And you guys were like, no, Kate, just drop it, just go, leave. Let's just leave, let's just drop it, don't make a scene. But I was like, no, I'm serious right now. I'm not going to leave this restaurant until I go up and confront them. So my dad said that he was going to go take me over to them because he didn't want me to go alone. So I walk up to them and I confront them about it. And I'm not really getting into detail on what I said, but but yeah.
Yeah, essentially she confronted them and said, why did you say this? And repeated what they said. And they had this look on their face like they were busted. And they said, we didn't say that. We said, wow, that's a big piece of cake.
So they kind of lied about it. But...
They said something that rhymed with a little bit with cake. But if they were really talking about cake, they wouldn't have been all secretive and snickering and making the type of faces that they were making. So we see this type of thing and hear this type of thing all the time. And you just can't understand until you've walked in our shoes what it feels like to see a loved one endure that. So Kate, I was so proud of you that night because I ended up taking Charlie and Jack out of the restaurant because I knew that stuff might be about to get real with Miss Kate because she's got a little bit of her mom's temper.
I'm short and feisty.
She's short and feisty, yes. So, yeah, Matt went with her to do that, and we don't fight every battle. We choose and pick, but this battle was one we chose to fight because it was Charlie's very first time wearing his brand new Justice clothes out in public to a restaurant. We were celebrating. It was a happy moment, and it was tarnished by these kids and their ruthless, rude comment that was absolutely despicable. So we talk about this and try to change people's minds, I hope. So you feel like it was probably pretty recently that you just fully embraced it, like this summer?
Yeah, it was recently when I embraced it, because before I was just like, oh, he might grow out of it, maybe not, like, it doesn't really affect me that much. But now seeing it firsthand has made me like realize just what exactly he goes through every day. So it's made me more accepting of it and like more like embracing of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were mad that night in the restaurant. You were like, I am not leaving this restaurant until I go up and confront those guys. And they were older than her, so she was very brave to do that.
Yeah, they were like 17.
In the moment, it was
like Jack's age.
Yeah, it was the right thing to do. So, what do you feel like Jack feels about the social climate of your age group and your high school, which is she and Jack go to the same arts magnet high school, and it's a very liberal place with a lot of different types of people. It's also a high school that I went to, so I knew I wanted them to go there. But Kate, do you feel that Charlie will have easier days ahead of him and kids like him once they get to high school, especially somewhere like where you go?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it will get way easier for him, because based on where we go, like, middle school was really rough and elementary school was rough. But, like, now that I'm in high school and stuff, like, even 8th grade, it was, like, way easier because people were starting to accept, like, what other people are going through and stuff like that. So high school and like 8th grade and up for Charlie, I feel like will be way easier because it was for me. So
yeah, and I know the drama can be sometimes a little bit more vicious with girls, just from personal experience and from seeing, you know, what Jack went through. And with most kind of stereotypical guys, middle school is not quite the same as it is for stereotypical girls, I guess. And I don't know, there just seems to be a lot of girl drama in general. But how do you feel about our family, our open talks? I think maybe sometimes we're a little bit too open for you. I don't know, maybe not. What do you think?
We have like these really open talks, and then one thing will just lead to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. So we'll be like talking for hours straight after dinner and stuff like that. And like we get into really deep conversations about like life and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool though, like knowing how they're accepting of whatever we do, or like if we need to talk to someone, we can just go up and talk to them about it, because we know that we're not going to get judged like some people do by their parents. We know that we're not going to.
I mean, if you rob a bank or something, but you know,
obviously. But
yeah, we're not we're more authoritative parents, and we'll talk about that different parenting styles in a little bit here. But we have tried to be more lenient with the kids, just so that they would be able to make mistakes while still under the safety of our roof, and rather than make the mistakes now than later in life when it is
Stakes are higher.
when the stakes are higher. So you feel like the family meetings that we have and the things that we talk about, and just so that you know, so that we're being realistic here, most of the time all 5 of us are at our phones like this. We're sitting in the same room doing this on our phones. Right? So we do that. We're just like every other family in America. We spend plenty of time in our own rooms with the door closed, not talking to each other. But when we do come together and talk, it is an open book. It's nice. We all enjoy it. we discuss everything under the sun. And so the kids have learned a lot about sexuality, gender expression, all of this kind of stuff. They've heard it from us first before they heard it from friends at school.
Like, we were raised to be accepting of other people.
Yeah.
So I feel like that has kind of influenced us too, to be more accepting of Charlie.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. Yeah, I think so. Okay, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No?
Okay, well, Kate, thank you so much for being willing to be on camera. I know, these kids hate it when I pull out the camera. They hate when I take photographs, all of that kind of stuff. That's why there aren't as many photos of them on my social media accounts and such, because when they get to be that age, they don't want photos taken. So, Charlie, it's your turn. Would you like to come over and join me over here? I think there he is. So Charlie has an alter ego who is a cat named Fluffy. Is that right?
Dog.
Oh, it's a dog. Dog named Fluffy. He often wants to change his name to Fluffy, but I don't know. We're not there yet.
Also,
Charlie, what would you...
She was talking earlier about, like, we're on our phones and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm usually on my computer making Minecraft videos. You can check out my channel. Can I say the name of my channel?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, in all capitals, Peridot. For some reason, YouTube won't let me change my name to just Fluffy Dog. But Peridot in all caps. And this is on YouTube. Space, capital F for Fluffy. And it's all one word when it's Fluffy Dog, and then capital D for dog.
Yeah, and he's gotten really good at the whole making not tutorials, but making video game videos and things like that. He's really taken a huge interest in that lately, so that's another thing that he's exploring lately. How do you feel, Charlie, about our family being open and kind of we talk about everything under the sun and no topic is too private or too taboo to talk about? How do you feel about that?
Pretty good, but I don't know what taboo is.
Oh, that means like something that most people wouldn't talk about because they think they shouldn't.
Oh yeah, I feel pretty good.
Okay, that's
I feel great.
good. Good. Okay. Do you remember back? I know, like, so fourth grade was a pretty tough year. This year is kind of hard. Fifth grade. Luckily, Charlie, you've got some wonderful people at your school that are very supportive of you. And I work in Charlie's school as well, so I get to see these beautiful moments when they happen. But is there anything you would want to tell people, anything you want people to know about you? Like, I know the kids that you feel that, and I've seen it too, kids that stare at your shoes because you wear twinkle toe Skechers that are pink and purple.
Yeah, first, I'm pretty sure none of my subscribers are watching, but if any of my subscribers are watching, shout out to all of you. One time when I was doing safety patrol at my school, somebody looked down while she was on the bus, and I was like making sure kids were walking. Oh,
Miss Morrow.
And what was I? Oh yeah.
You were monitoring kids waiting for bus.
Yeah, and they were just getting out, and some girl, she was just like smiled at me, and she was like one of those smiles that are like, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so that made me feel like, maybe I shouldn't do this.
yeah, and see, that crushes my heart because I know how happy he is when he picked out those shoes, and that was all his decision. He picked out those shoes, and when he wore them for the first time out in public, he had a spring in his step. He was totally himself. You know, he was happier than he's ever been when he gets to wear what he likes. But all it takes is just one or two looks or comments from kids who maybe just don't know any better to ruin his entire day. And, you know, it's hard to be a fifth grader and to not fit in. But we're not going to tell him to pretend to be somebody that he's not. Hi, Aunt Caroline. We're not going to tell him to pretend to be someone he's not just to make other people comfortable, because that's not what we believe. So, was there anything else that you want people to know about you? Like, how does it make you feel when people ask you things like, you know, are you a boy or a girl or whatever?
It makes me feel, also, one time in carpool, so this little boy, he was waiting for his bus to go. He raised his hand, I went over to him, and he said, so I've always been wondering, are you a boy or a girl? And I always just can't answer that question, so I'm just like, Sadie, can you please tell this boy not to tell me that?
Yeah.
But
It's hard.
I feel I don't really like it. It just makes me feel like garbage.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it hurts me too when I hear people say those things. And while a lot of the time the kids might just be generally curious and they might just be like, hey, I just want to know, are you a boy or a girl? Well, questions like this are ultimately problematic because gender expansive people sometimes don't identify as either gender. And Charlie's kind of in that stage right now where he's let us know more recently that he doesn't really feel more male or more female. When he was asked that question, he said, you know, do you feel more male or female? He said, I feel more like a person. And I think if we all could embrace that mentality, what a better place this world would be. But anyway, not everybody's there yet. We're working on it, buddy. We're trying to change the world a little bit at a time. We're going to get there. And you've heard your older sister and brother say that high school is going to be a lot better. But it's tough right now, and it is offensive when other children question, especially when they raise their hand and say right in front of 150 other kids that are sitting there, are you a boy or a girl? You can imagine that you know, that would be problematic. So yeah, we have a suggestion here from our friend Lisa, perhaps stating that about gender expansive to the curious might help. Yeah, and here's the thing, Charlie, we've role played, we've had so many different approaches to these questions. The most common question that he gets this year is, why do you wear girls' shoes? And he has retorted that with, what do you mean? What are girls' shoes? Or because I like them. I like the colors. Pink and purple are my favorite. Or why do you wear your shoes? Or if someone says, those are girls' shoes, then he can say, no, they're not. They're just shoes. Shoes aren't boy or girl. But that's not how kids are programmed to think. And so they want to label everything as binary, you know, male or female. And we just have to break away from that. We just have to. We have to get to that point. Eventually, he just got tired. We were on our way to school one day, and he said, Mom, what do I say today when somebody else criticizes my shoes? And I said, you just tell them I wear them because I like them. Simple as that. And he said, but it's just so tiring saying, because I like them, because I like them, because I like them all day, every day on a repetitive loop. And I can understand that that would get exhausting after a little while. And I think, you know, not all of the kids that ask questions are mean-spirited. Some of them are just genuinely curious and just really want to understand. And so we try to seize those moments as learning opportunities. You can generally tell by the way a question is phrased whether that person is asking out of a good place of curiosity or of a place where they're looking for material to offend. So All right, so that was my family. Do you want to come back and join me for the next part, or do you want to just stay where you are?
I'm off to make more Minecraft videos for you all. And remember, go ahead and subscribe to my channel.
All right, thank you, Charlie. We love all three of you so much. Thank you so much. You're brave, your soul is beautiful, and I love you.
Hugs!
All right, hugs for everybody. Okay, so what we're going to move on to here, Matt and I, a few things we wanted to talk about, and we will be running later than 8 o'clock tonight because we had, once again, the technical difficulties and just the rushing of trying to get Jack home and get everything set up. So we'll be going a little over 8 o'clock tonight. I apologize for that, but we want to cover everything on our agenda. I'll get to the question in a few minutes that I want to ask you about as his dad. How did you get to a place of acceptance? We'll come back around to that, but I want to lay down some other background first. Well, I said that we were going to talk about a couple of different parenting styles. And I remember learning about this as an undergrad in psychology at Meredith College. Woohoo! Angels. There's authoritarian parents, and there's authoritative, and there's permissive. And the two that I really wanted to talk about were authoritarian and authoritative. Because if you're raising a transgender child or gender expansive child or gender creative or whatever you want to call it, you really have got to decide what kind of a parent you're going to be. Our parenting style is that we lead by more authoritative versus authoritarian. And here's the difference. I'm going to consult with my notes to make sure that I put it in the right words. Let me get this up to where it needs to be. Sorry. Can you do that maybe? Oh, wait, there we are. There we are. Okay. So parents with an authoritarian style, which is not what we are. We're the opposite, but authoritarian parents are the type of parents who have very high expectations of their children, but they provide very little in the way of feedback or nurturance. These are the parents who tend to punish heavily for mistakes. If and when they do give feedback, it is often negative. This type of parent is the type who might see 6 A's and 1 B, and their comment would immediately go to criticism rather than praise, i.e., what happened with this 1B? Rather than saying, hey, look, you got 6 A's, that's great. They would jump to the criticism first. Yelling and corporal punishment are also commonly seen with this style of parenting. They also tend to have very high expectations of their children, and they have very strict rules that they expect to be followed unconditionally and without question or explanation. Do as I do, do what I say, don't question me, that type of mentality. And people with this parenting style often utilize punishment rather than discipline, but they're not necessarily willing to or able to explain the reasoning behind their rules. It's always because I said so. And oh my gosh, yes, we've definitely fallen back on that line and said that a few times ourselves, but that's when we can't think of any other excuse. Now, authoritative parents are what we are striving to be, and that is, it's about setting some limits, reasoning with kids who are old enough to reason, not 2-year-olds, and then being highly in tune with and responsive to your children's emotional needs. Now, as parents, we don't let our kids just get away with bad behavior. We do take a firm stance, kind of having the opinion that we expect our children to behave responsibly. And when they don't, we're the type of parents who we tend to let our kids suffer the natural consequences of their behavior, which is often punishment enough. So we really haven't had to punish any of our kids a whole awful lot, because often what they receive as a natural consequence to their behavior is worse than any punishment we could dole out. This approach, through research, has been linked to the most successful child outcomes. And that's why I mean, that's proven research. So that's why we strive to be this type of person and this type of parent. Kids that are raised by authoritative parents are more likely to become independent, self-reliant, socially accepted, academically successful. That's another one. Thank you. And well-behaved, we hope. By its very nature, authoritative parenting occupies sort of a middle ground between gaining or granting too much freedom and being too strict. So it's kind of somewhere more in the middle. And on that note, I want to talk a minute about discipline and punishment. They are not the same thing. I think sometimes people think of the word discipline as the same thing as punishment, but they're not the same. Discipline comes from, I won't get into the whole word origins, but I can put that maybe on the blog or something, but sorry. Anyway, discipline ultimately comes from the word disciple, which means to lead, to guide, to shepherd. Punishment comes from a Greek and Latin background, meaning revenge, and words from which we get other words like pain and penalty. Sometimes this one really gets me a lot, because sometimes parents will use that biblical quote, spare the rod and spoil the child. And they use that as a as a justification for corporal punishment or spanking or whatever. But I think that it's important to note that the rod, as it was used in biblical times, was a tool used by shepherds to gently lead and guide the sheep along the right path. The rod was not used to beat the sheep into submission. So that piece of scripture is one of many throughout the Bible that gets misinterpreted from its original meaning and used to justify so-called common sense beliefs. But anyway, that's just one of those things. So you have to think about or do you discipline or do you punish? And then what type of a parent are you? These are very important things that you have to examine in yourself before you can come around to accepting raising this type of child. Why are we so open? Why do I write about it publicly? This is a question I answered in last week's chat, but just to recap, I've been writing informally all of my life. I started blogging 10 years ago, but 8 years ago was when I discovered that my son was expressing a more feminine gender. And that's when I started exploring this whole topic of gender and kind of that double standard of how it's socially okay for girls to be, quote, tomboys, but not the other way around. There is no positive word in the English language to describe boys who act like or dress more feminine. So I started writing about that, the double standard, as kind of a way to sort through my feelings. But I read some of my writing before a public audience for the very first time last May in the Listen to Your Mother show. Huge shout out to them because they are an amazing organization. I heard about the auditions. I kind of pulled together a piece here and there from my blog, Frankensteined it together to create an audition piece, auditioned, and then the next day found out I was cast. So Listen to Your Mother is a series of live readings founded by the well-beloved mom blogger Ann Imig, and they are coming up this year on their last season, which is really sad, but anyway, that's where I got my start writing and reading publicly. Now, I want to clarify that I did not do this without my son Charlie's permission. Even before I auditioned, I read the piece to him. I told him I was going to be reading this in front of a very large audience and that it would be on YouTube for the entire world to see on the Listen to Your Mother channel. For anyone and everyone to see, maybe even some of his school friends. And his response was, Mom, I want you to do this. And not only do I want you to do this, but you have to do this. So he's wise beyond his years, first of all, but just having his consent and knowing he wanted to connect with other people around the world like him was all the permission I needed to start writing about this publicly. So that's part of the reason why we're public. Just this summer, I became a published writer for Huffington Post and a few other places. But I guess what sparked a lot of attention was an open letter that I wrote to the girls' clothing store Justice that ended up going viral, and it's been shared now over 45,000 times. And the thing is that our son would get labeled as gay or sissy or whatever, regardless of my writing. In fact, before I went public with my writing, he was called these names already, before we were even really talking about it out loud. Effeminate boys have been called these names for a very, very long time. This is nothing new, but it is something that has got to end. I mean, the stigma has got to end. There's nothing inherently wrong about someone who presents feminine, but as I said last week, it kind of goes back to that hatred of women when women were a subclass of citizens. But Charlie has received more positive, inspiring messages than we can count from this. Not one piece of hate mail has been sent to him thus far, knock on wood, which gives me extreme hope for the future. I had to create a Facebook fan page for him just because he was begging to be on Facebook and he's not old enough yet. And this way he can receive some of those awesome, positive, supportive messages. And then I had to create a Facebook writer page for myself so that I could respond to the thousands of emails, private messages, letters that I've received from people. And I do try to answer all of them. So I guess what we've seen in Charlie after receiving all of these positive messages is that it's been an incredible morale booster for him. He went from utter despair last year in 4th grade, before we started writing and talking openly about this. He would be literally curled up on the seat in the car, of the front seat on the way to school, either in tears or very close to tears because he was dreading the day so badly. Now, this is before I went public writing about any of this. Yeah, I was keeping a blog, but I didn't have maybe 2 followers, and that was it. And it was family, so that doesn't really count as public. But I saw him go from this utter despair last year to complete joy, peace, and happiness, having received so much worldwide love and appreciation. So it's kind of a win-win situation for all of us. So that is a little bit about why we are public. There's another piece of it, and that is that we write publicly about it because Charlie is open. I am open. The whole family is open, I hope, as you've seen and listening to everybody talk a little bit. And ultimately, somebody has got to start this conversation in the world. The white elephant in the room. Charlie is on board with that. He wants world acceptance of gender expansiveness. I'm just going with it. And, I don't believe that the timing of all of this was coincidence either. So I'm going to answer 6 questions here that we've gotten. And these are, is it 6? Well, anyway, 6 or 7, I don't know. But these are the questions that we've gotten the most frequently. So I condensed them down, and I'm just going to go ahead and answer all of them right here, right now. The first one I already did. Why are you so public about it? But the second one is, but how much consent can a 10-year-old really give for your public writing? He may be okay with it now, but what about 5 years from now? What about 10 years from now? Aren't you setting him up for failure? That type of comment. Well, my answer is I can't predict the future, but right now, in this moment, he is not embarrassed about it. He encourages us and me to talk on a widespread platform about it. I did ask his consent before I even auditioned for Listen to Your Mother, and he gladly gave it. He recently even volunteered to do a StoryCorps recording where he got to narrate his own story, and that is preserved forever in the archives of the Library of Congress. Is that right? StoryCorps, yeah. So he did that, and we have our own CD copy of that, of Charlie telling his own story in his own words, that we will have for generations and generations. And after Charlie did that recording, he said he wanted to listen to it in the car every day on the way to school. So I don't know how he's going to feel in 5 years. Maybe he's going to hate us. I don't know. But we're doing what feels right in the moment right now. And we also know that change is not going to happen until this issue is addressed publicly. You know, and that can be whether we're talking about it, we're having conversations, or writing about it, anything to spark a conversation, anything to get people more enlightened. So that's kind of our answer to that question. And the second most frequent question we get is, well, how does your husband feel about this? Or how does his dad feel about this? I guess that some people assume a father figure could not possibly agree to raising a gender creative son. However, I'm happy to report that my husband here of nearly 20 years is 100% supportive of raising all three of our children exactly as they are. And this includes, you know, all three of the kids that you've met here tonight. You know, we can only go with what they're telling us how they identify right now. And I think maybe in the beginning, it may have been a little unnerving for Matt. So I wanted to let him speak to that, because people will probably understand, you know, it was easier for me to support right off the bat as soon as I realized what was going on. But yeah, Matt, why don't you talk for a while about what you went through?
Sure, I'll be happy to.
I'll move over.
You know, when Charlie first started wearing princess costumes and dresses and whatnot, you know, I thought it was cute. It was funny. It was, you know, he's, all right. You know, he's 2. He's 3. You know, not a problem. It wasn't a big deal. When I saw that it wasn't going away. It wasn't a phase. I was more worried about, what are the neighbors going to think? What are others going to think? You know, we were outside. He would wear them outside in the front yard. And we used to live in a small town that was very conservative. And, you know, we did get some pushback from the neighbors in one way or another. It was subtle, but it was there. It was difficult for me as a dad, as a guy, to accept that my son, you know, was wearing dresses. But, you know, when Martie, you know, took him to Target, said this, you know, this is how happy he is, you know, I came around, and it was enlightening to say, you know, who cares what he plays with or what he wears? He's happy. And that's really all that matters. He's happy. So I've been on board since he was about 4. You know, and I think a lot of people will go through this if you have a gender creative child, whether you're the mom or the dad, whatever it happens to be, you have these expectations in your mind of, this is how this individual is going to be. Oh yeah, they're a boy, they're going to play football, baseball, do sports, they're going to, you know, be into guy things and trucks and, you know, whatever. But if they're not, that's okay too. And just be aware that, make them happy. They're your kids, they have their own personality. It's not your job to steer that, it's your job to accept them for who they are and what they want to do. And that's how I came about.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
So that's how Matt feels about it. Okay, yeah. He and by the way, Charlie is here in the room with us. He's listening. He's smiling and giving us thumbs up when we say something that he really likes. The third thing that we get the third question that we get the most often is something, and it's not really a question, it's more of a comment, and it goes like this. Well, that's all fine and good as long as you're just being honest with him and being truthful about how hard of a time he's going to have and how he's going to get bullied. You know, he better toughen up. He better expect to be bullied. So let me address that in two parts. First of all, as we established earlier, we are all about honesty. We have lots of these family meetings. Pretty much any conversation is fair game for topic in our house. We don't even care that our kids use curse words as long as they don't use them in public or around, I mean, 'cause we're not in denial. We know they're going to do some things.
I taught them to swear correctly, and I'm proud of that. They use curse words as adjectives.
This is the former English teacher over here.
They use it as descriptive language, and they don't overdo it. They know how to. They're going to use it anyway. They hear it. They've been hearing it at school since 4th grade.
Yeah, we're not trying to shield them.
No,
but anyway, we really haven't had to have many of these conversations with our son about how tough it's going to be as a gender creative kid, because he's already been experiencing this tough life his entire life. He doesn't know any different. He's been experiencing the odd looks, the rude comments, the intrusive questions. He's been experiencing them his whole life. This is his reality. 4th grade, as I said, was his hardest year yet, probably because it coincides with the beginning of puberty and adolescence, and social exclusions that come when girls stick together and boys stick together, searching for their identities. But, I've always been open about Charlie's gender creativity, even when he was young and I was looking for resources and support. I'm just speaking from a somewhat bigger platform now, but I didn't even begin to speak from that bigger platform until I first got Charlie's permission and okay with us doing so. He really does want his story told, so that's what we attempt to do in a very authentic way. Recently, he was asked, and I touched on this earlier, and he enthusiastically agreed to record his own story for StoryCorp with Matt and me present. So we kind of did like a question and answer session with the three of us, and it was awesome. But at the same time, it was heartbreaking because that day he revealed some things to us, some deep hurts that he's been through that we had not been aware of. Prior to that day, we like to believe our kids tell us everything, but they don't. They don't tell us their deep, deep hurts. And with Charlie, bless his heart, a lot of it is he doesn't tell me because he doesn't want to make mom upset. He doesn't want to see me cry, things like that. And I've told him, you can't worry about how we feel. We're going to support you no matter what. But this was a really hard recording because this day, he asked some very hard questions of us, and I'll get back to that later. But to address the second part of this concern about making sure he's prepared for the bullying that he's going to have to endure, that is just straight up victim blaming, and victim blaming is never okay. If you're not familiar with what victim blaming is, I'm going to share a little article here. This comes from Psychology Today, which is a magazine about psychology. And the article name was Stop Blaming the Victim, Changing Gender Paradigms for Safer Schools. And I just want to read a little bit of this. This is by the author, Elizabeth J. Meyer, PhD. She says, last week I was giving a workshop on preventing bullying with a group of PE teachers from all over California. I started talking about the case of Seth Walsh, the 13-year-old who died by suicide after years of bullying at his schools in rural California. Now, this was back in 2012. You may or may not have heard about this. she goes on to say, a teacher who worked in that region said, yeah, but he was really different and really flamboyant. He really kind of brought it on himself. And she says, I am always amazed when I hear this victim blaming. There are so many cases of principals or teachers or parents telling kids not to dress this way or to talk that way or do this thing that they love, and they won't get bullied so much. The message is this: you wouldn't have so many problems if you were less you. Kids learn that there is something wrong with them when this happens. So instead of blaming the victim, we need to look at the environment, not the child, as the problem. So that's what victim blaming is. And not to say that Charlie is inherently a victim, but he kind of is when he is being harassed in school. That makes him a victim. She went on to say that kids learn that there is something wrong with them when this happens. Instead of blaming the victim, we need to look at the environment, not the child, as the problem. I am always moved to tears when working with families of transgender and gender creative youth. I'm impressed by the strength, wisdom, and courage of these youth and their supportive family members. I am also infuriated hearing the painful stories of daily injustice, exclusion, and violence. This time I got choked up. I was presenting about all the harms that are associated with children who are targets for bullying and harassment. My audience was different than the usual teachers and principals. It was parents, grandparents, and other family members who were trying to find ways to help their transgender and gender creative kids be safe at school. As I was rattling off the research, lower academic performance, increased absenteeism, depression, anxiety, loneliness, abuse of drugs and alcohol, and suicidal ideation, I looked up and paused. I remembered my audience, and I just wanted to hug them all. I said, however, you can provide such a buffer for your child by being supportive and accepting and being an advocate. You can offer them a safe haven and unconditional love, and that goes a long way to protect them from all of these harms. So again, that is what we're trying to do. Victim blaming. Don't do it. Not cool. The next most common question that we get is, but why the need to label? Can't kids just be kids? Why do they need labels? Well, in all of my experience of raising 3 of them, no, they can't just be kids. That's not the way it tends to work with kids. Kids are going to get labeled. They're going to give labels, regardless, typically by one another. For kids who are gender different or gender creative, those labels like gay, sissy, pansy, faggot, these type of things can be life-crushing. These kids are not even sexually identifying yet. And even if they are, what is wrong with being gay? Before our society even had the term gender creative, you know, we addressed this last week, the common label was tomboy for girls, and for boys, there was no friendly equivalent. You know, they heard things like the words I just mentioned before. My son is going to get labeled anyway. He already has been, you know, when he was called gay many times over. And sexual identity or sexual orientation is not even on his radar yet. He's pretty conservative that way. He's pretty innocent that way. So I know that it's coming. He is going to reach a point where he decides to be either of a sexual orientation or not, asexual. But either way, he's going to get labeled regardless. And usually the labeling is going to have an intent of horrible degradation. So at least now with the label gender creative, he can attempt to correct his peers or the kids that make fun of him. He can have a chance to educate them. When they say, you're gay, he can say, no, I'm not gay. I'm gender creative. And I'll be happy to tell you what that means. It's an opportunity for education. No, of course, it's not going to stop the insults, and we know that. But it gives him a positive rebuttal for people who try to define him until he knows what his sexuality will look like. I mean, he's already defined himself as gender creative, and nobody can remove that label from him with their negative critiques. Also, and I think more importantly, before Charlie even knew about the trans and gender nonconforming, gender creative population, he felt alone and sad, as do most gender creative kids. He had always been anxiety laden since he was 2, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had his first panic attack at 2.5. He always felt like he didn't fit in, even in preschool, as crazy as that sounds. On the outside, he looked very gregarious and happy, but there was something a little different, and he knew that he was different. So he started spiraling downward fast in 4th grade, and I started showing him videos of kids like Corey Mazon, Jazz Jennings, CJ of Raising My Rainbow, and other kids who identify as either trans or gender creative. He had seen several of these kids before, but now it was really resonating that he was 9 years old. He watched and he listened. And just for him, as it was for me, when I realized, I watched him kind of have that light bulb moment when he realized that he did in fact have a label, and he did have other kids out there who were just like him. And so kind of his own assertion, after being exposed to different documentaries and books, he ended up stating in the car on the way to school, "I am gender creative," and threw his arms up. And it was a moment of huge relief for him to suddenly know that he was not on an island and that he had people to identify with. He started asking me to start up a gender creative play group where he could be free to play with My Little Pony and princess costumes, all that he wanted, in a judgment-free zone, and maybe, hopefully, maybe even with like-minded kids. I made a promise to him that day that I would create that group, and we did. This summer, we opened up the group SEARCH. SEARCH is an acronym that stands for Safe Environment for the Acceptance of Rainbow Children. The CH at the end is also a nod to Charlie, because those are the first 2 letters of his name. But we started this summer. We have a closed and private Facebook group as well that is growing by the day. We vet out our members before we allow them entry. You know, we look into them. We get them to answer some questions, and
we weed out the trolls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And our support group is a dual purpose group. Actually, it's kind of a triple purpose group, because one, we have the local play group where gender creative kids, specific ages kindergarten through 5th grade, because this area, this portion of the population is typically ignored. You can find programs almost anywhere for LGBTQ plus teens and young adults and on, but finding something for children that's not little teeny tiny children, or they, like LGBT centers will often have support or group, like reading book clubs or groups for parents who are gay, and you know, like 2 moms raising a family. They might have story time for that type of family, but we couldn't find what we were looking for, which was a play group where Charlie could just play with all the things he wants to play with and not have a cisgender friend there saying, "I don't want to play that." And once he knew that there were people out there like him, he wanted desperately to connect with them as soon as possible. And the second part of our group is that it is a support group for parents or caregivers of these gender nonconforming children. The third component is that it has become this online community via Facebook, where we have people from all over the United States and Canada, and even, I believe, as far away as Egypt, who either are raising this type of child or are a very strong advocate for this type of child. And we have right now, I want to say we have about 125 members in that group. and it's growing every day. So clearly there is a need. So anyway, back to labels and about labels. If they are something that gives a kid hope, comfort, positive associations, and a rebuttal towards hurtful comments, then I'm fine with labels. Sometimes labels are not only helpful, but absolutely necessary when you're trying to get a child the educational, medical, psychological, and or legal services and protections that they're entitled to. So the next question we hear most often is, don't you feel like maybe you're encouraging this or you're influencing your son? Something like that. No. If anything, I'm learning new things from him every day. And I think my husband feels the same.
I do.
Yeah. If anything, we fought this at first. And a perfect example is 2 years ago, summer before 4th grade, Charlie wanted to pick out his own backpack. We had always just kind of picked one out for him, like superheroes or blue or, you know, something more that looked a little more masculine, I guess. But not last year, 2 years ago, he was like, I want to pick my own backpack. So we were like, okay. We went to Target. We had all 3 of the kids, and he went straight to a. Do you remember what it looked like? I think it was. It might have been a cat, but it was hot pink, and it was furry. Right? It was
I
like.
remember that. Yeah.
It was like a stuffed animal backpack,
Yeah.
huge, hot pink. And Matt and I mean, he pulled that off the shelf and he was like, oh my God, I love this. And Matt and I looked at each other like, holy crap. Ooh, no, he can't. No.
Yeah.
And we didn't come out and say to him, no, you can't get that. But we both looked at each other like, ooh, that's
That's not going to have a good end result for children.
yeah. But then we kind of went over to the side and talked about it for a minute, and we were like, well, okay, wait a minute. So all of his life, we've been telling him, be yourself. Don't try to please other people or just to make them comfortable. Be yourself and be yourself unapologetically. But we were about to tell him he couldn't get a hot pink backpack. And that hit us pretty hard. And we were like, we can't do that. That would be the wrong message. So we gave up the battle at that moment, and we were like, okay, if that's the one you want, that's the one you can get. And yes, we did talk to him about, now you know that we don't believe in boys things and girls things, but a lot of people do, and a lot of kids at school are going to probably say some not very nice things about your backpack. And here we were victim blaming, which we shouldn't have done. We learned from that and we moved on. But he ended up picking out something a little different, but the only way it can be described is a glittery explosion of rainbows, kittens, cupcakes, and hearts. Pretty feminine. In fact, several girls at the school had that backpack already. And we still both had the same feeling of dread. But that's what he wanted.
That's what he wanted.
It made him happy. And he got a hot purple sparkly notebook to go with it and a couple of other things. And I said this last week, he strapped that backpack on every day last year in 4th grade like a piece of armor, like he was going into war. And even though he knew he had the choice to put that backpack away and wear his old blue one, he didn't do that. He continued wearing the one that he liked. Kind of what I wrote on my blog about that was, it was like he was collectively giving a middle finger to anyone that would judge. So, and he got a lot of comments about that from adults even. We had one guy walking into school who saw Charlie's backpack and kind of laughed and said, oh, I see, you must have gotten your sister's hand-me-down. And,
That's pretty much where most of society is.
Yeah.
And it's really too bad that society hasn't come to the point of just accepting people for who they are and what they want to do.
Yeah, and it's not just North Carolina. This is all over the world. So Yeah, if anything, we learned from him. We're not encouraging him. We almost fought it tooth and nail to begin with because we did not want our child to have a hard life. What parent wants their child to have a hard life? But we've had many conversations with him where we tell him that no matter what, he gets to be whoever he wants to be as long as he's not hurting anyone. Whether that ends up being like a hyper masculine lumberjack or a delicate ballerina, it is all good. We don't care. We just want it to be his choice, and he's choosing every step of the way how he defines himself. So we definitely encourage him to be himself. Now, this is not the same thing as like giving a toddler keys to the car because they want to drive and then just saying, have at it. This is us letting him explore and realize his gender identity and or expression while he's under the safety of our own roof. So that when he finally goes out to live on his own, he will hopefully have had all of this stuff worked out in a safe place, which is home. I have friends who weren't allowed to deal with this while living under their parents' roof, and the outcomes were not good. So we're learning from him every day. I write about it with his permission in hopes of enlightening even one person. But it turns out that the message has reached far more people than I ever thought was possible all over the world. We hear daily from people who tell us how much they needed this message right now. And this is both supporters and people who already get gender creativity and people who didn't understand it before but do now. And those are the best ones to get, the people that say, thank you for putting a face and a name to this. I finally get it. You've changed an old person's mind, was a favorite comment that I got from someone that I don't know. Or we hear from people that say things like, or from parents who say, thank you, you're telling my story. You're telling the story of my child. Or adults who say, I was that kid 40 years ago. And how much better could I have been if my parents had only accepted me and encouraged me to be who I was, rather than try to hide me in the closet. And by encouraging him to be himself, we're encouraging him to be authentic and not like us. Dr. Diane Ehrensaft, I mentioned her last week. She's the patron saint of gender creative children. She says, and I quote, where is it? The challenge for parents of transitioning children, whether that's transgender or gender creative, is to let go of their dreams so that their children can have their own. We aren't supposed to be creating clones of ourselves as parents. The whole point of perpetuating the human race is to be constantly evolving, changing, and bettering ourselves. So, yeah, I definitely don't think that we are causing this or...
We certainly didn't steer him to put on that first princess
No.
costume, to put on that ballerina costume that his sister used to wear. He did that all on his own, and he looked great in it. He rocked it.
Yeah.
And ever since then, this is what we do. I mean, it could be said that we do influence him in the sense that we try to influence him in a good way, in a positive way, and explain the reality of things in simple terms, but we do influence in a way that is going to be helpful for him. It goes back to our parenting style, where right now is the time for him to experiment with things. He's still under our roof, he's still under our protection, and therefore it's safe. It's a safe environment for him to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 6, a question that we've gotten a couple of times is, hey, I think you might be exploiting your son. Or this one, don't you think that you're making your son bully bait? Anyone who would accuse me of doing this for my own notoriety obviously does not know me very well as a human being, or they don't know me as well as they think they do. I would not have chosen this wild and crazy ride of raising a gender creative child. I would not have chosen it because it is not easy. But now that I've learned to embrace it and advocate for it, I receive more signs every day that this is my calling. I feel that I'm being led to reach a wider audience in hopes of maybe educating people about discrimination, shame, and guilt, especially regarding gender identity and expression. And those things just have got to end. I'm not making my child bully bait because he was already bully bait before I ever went public. He was already being ostracized, excluded, and teased before I started writing about any of this publicly. Now that we're out, so to say, it has been a win-win for all of us. Charlie has gained self-confidence. He's gained confidence in his gender expression due to the large volumes of love mail that he's been receiving from all over the world. He gets video messages from kids that are just beautiful. And this is my favorite. The kids in his school have become more accepting, which is absolutely beautiful to see. There was one kid in 4th grade who really gave Charlie a heck of a time. He did things that he knew would aggravate Charlie just to get a rise out of him. And it was a struggle. And this is one of these, kind of hyper masculine kids, very athletic, so forth. This kid would laugh at Charlie, call him names, tell him to get out of the way. He would burp at him and then laugh, and Charlie would recoil away, repulsed, drama. But anyway, this child now in 5th grade goes out of his way to compliment Charlie. 2 examples. One day he said, "Hey, Charlie, I like your shoes. Very cool, man." And then kept walking. And the next time, and again, I work at his school, so I get to see these moments firsthand. Another time he said to Charlie, "You're looking good today, Charlie." And he's not being sarcastic and he's not kidding. So maybe somehow in some roundabout way, the message has gotten back to him and his family, and they're learning to be more open-minded. So that's what it's ultimately all about.
I'm going to address Elaine's question there, just as a break.
Oh, yes.
Does he experiment creativity in a masculine way, sports? He doesn't do sports. We have a basketball hoop, and he'll go out and shoot hoops once in a while.
And he's really good at it.
He is good at it. He is. We have scooters and bikes, but that's not really boy or girl thing. He draws, and he really likes Steven Universe, and he draws these characters and makes up his own, and it's amazing.
He also rollerblades and roller skates, and he's quite good at that. But he's really, we've asked him about joining athletic teams. He's not interested. That's not his thing. He doesn't care to play on a team. He'll go out and shoot some hoops in the driveway just for fun, but after 5 minutes, he's done. He would much rather do something else.
All 3 of our kids have been like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We tried to push sports on him at an early age, baseball, and it was a monumental failure. It just wasn't good.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. So again, we don't believe that we're making our kid bully bait. I feel like we're actually empowering him, because when others are saying that he's a sissy, he's gay, whatever, they're going to say this regardless of what we do or don't say or do or don't write. He's able to now refute the slander with a correction. He can say, "No, I'm actually gender creative," and then it's an opportunity for education. And we know that he's going to experience the hatred that is shown towards gender-expansive boys and men in general. So by writing about it, I'm going ahead and sort of claiming the language back and saying, yes, he is what you say he is. He is effeminate. He does shriek in a high-pitched girly voice. He does flinch if a ball comes towards him or a bug. Yes, he is what you say he is, but there's nothing wrong with that. Or we can say, no, he's not gay. He's gender creative. Again, let me explain the difference to you. It's always a potential opportunity to educate someone every time. Another thing we've learned is that accepting him at home is not enough. Accepting these type of people just behind closed doors is not enough. We need everyone from the school to the community to be on board. I've always felt that by Charlie, well, he's got all this support from us at home, that should be enough, but it's not. When Charlie is at home in his safe zone wearing his sparkly skirts and sparkly outfits or dresses and heels, there is a remarkable happiness that just keeps blossoming. When he's wearing a dress at home, for example, he is a brand new child. He is happy, carefree, joyful, at peace, easygoing, all smiles. He doesn't have anger issues that he otherwise does have when he's wearing traditional boys' clothing. He doesn't have negative self-talk when he's wearing a dress. What kind of parent wouldn't want to see that joy in their child? So, you know, and going back to the StoryCorps recording that he did when he was telling his story, he talked about how he feels wearing this type of clothing. And that day he started asking us very targeted, specific questions, like asking us what various other family members think of his coming out as gender creative. And because we're honest, we've had to explain that not everyone understands. Either they don't understand why you are the way you are, or they don't understand why I write about it and strive to educate people. But that has been hard for him. But fortunately, we have mostly a family that is accepting and embracing, and he is loved and he knows that. But family exclusion is something that transgender or gender creative people have to deal with a lot in the real world. And they all tell me, the ones I talk to, when whether I'm volunteering at the LGBT center or if they contact me via email or through my blog, they say that the family exclusion is the worst pain of all. And research has even shown that young adults who experience low family acceptance of gender identity are more likely statistically to be at risk for depressive symptoms, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempts. So again, what parent could do that to their child knowingly? What parent could do that? We know from research that transgender and gender creative children and youth are statistically more likely to have successful outcomes if parents work to create safe and supportive spaces for their child within the home, but also they're likely to have successful outcomes when their parents require others to respect their child, and when they advocate for their child, and of course when they express love for their child. That's ultimately why we're doing this. Research and statistics don't lie. Okay. From the Human Rights Campaign Guide, Supporting and Caring for Transgender Children. This is a wonderful thing to read if you haven't. They say, it is not uncommon for a child to feel pressure at home, school, or elsewhere to hide their gender-expansive traits. The social pressure, when it exists, can be intense and very painful, leading children to hide their true gender selves altogether. Families may even encourage the child to do so, hoping to protect them from the bullying. Unfortunately, hiding one's identity or gender-expansive traits can cause serious problems during childhood and later in life, including all those things I mentioned before: depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicide. Although social experiences can help to shape a child's gender identity, neither families nor professionals can change that identity, and trying to do so can be extremely harmful, and it has since been listed as unethical. So we don't even try to pray the gay away anymore, or tell a transgender girl that she's not really a girl because she was born a boy. We don't, that's just unethical. It's not practiced anymore. And actually, these kids are guaranteed protection through Title IX, if they're in public school. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 requires all schools that receive public funding to proactively enact policies and procedures that prevent discrimination that's based on gender. In fact, just in December 2014, the Office of Civil Rights provided some guidance, and they indicated that Title IX includes protections for gender-expansive youth and can be applied retroactively. So Title IX prohibits harassment of students. That means they can't be called gay. They can't be called faggot, sissy, or whatever, because it prohibits harassment of these students on the basis of gender expression. Schools have a duty to ensure, according to Title IX, that gender diverse and transgender students are included in all school infrastructure. For example, they have to provide gender neutral bathroom options. They should avoid the use of gender segregation in practices like school uniforms, separating boys versus girls, school dances, and extracurricular activities. These are all structured ways to provide safer school environments, and we are legally obligated to do so through Title IX of the Education Amendments. Now, our Wake County Sheriff here in Raleigh recently released a statement that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. He wants the whole school system, the Wake County school system, which Wake County itself is basically the size of the entire state of Rhode Island, if that gives you any idea of how big our school system is. It's huge. Our sheriff has just threatened to pull his resource officers from our public schools if the school system as a whole doesn't implement the same procedures regarding transgender students across the board. And his stance is that every parent should be informed if there's a trans student in their child's gym class, for example, so that they can then decide whether or not they want their child to be in the class with that transgender kid. He actually likened it to the standard letter that we send out for head lice. Yes, he did. We have a letter in public school that we send out when kids are identified to have head lice. And this letter goes out, does not identify the kid who has it, but it lets other parents in the grade level know there's been a lice breakout. I'm itching just thinking about it. But anyway, he wants a letter similar, and he used that term, the head lice letter. He wants a letter like that to go home with every student that has a trans student in the class with them. He has threatened to pull his resource officers if the school system won't enforce something like this. Well, he can't do this.
Can I say something?
Because, let me just finish my one thought.
Okay.
But he can't do this because the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act protects personal information about students in school records, including sexual orientation and gender identity, and in most circumstances prohibits the release of this information without consent. So legally, he can't do that. What did you want to say?
I just want to say this guy's an idiot. He's ignorant,
Yes.
and he's really overstepping his bounds, outside of the law, and I just can't stand the guy.
Well, there's a lot of ignorance. It's not just coming from that one place. There's a lot of ignorance and misinformation about trans people and gender creative people, and that's why we do what we're doing. We're just trying to change or enlighten one mind at a time. And as a whole, transgender youth and gender expansive youth are extremely hidden. And I think because they're so hidden, it's easy for people to believe that these students are extremely rare. Now, that's not true. We know that they're not rare. They're not like a fraction of the population. There are more of them than we know. It is extremely difficult to estimate the prevalence of trans students in school, but the prevalence of self-identified and transgender adults as of 2011 had been estimated to be 0.3% of the U.S. general population. Now, that's people who in 2011 were openly admitting who they were. What we do know, though, is that the experiences that trans and gender expansive or creative students have at school appear to have effects on their well-being as adults. The victimization associated with school or experienced at school with regards to their gender nonconformity has a lasting impact, and it puts these children at risk for negative mental health outcomes in their teen years and in their adult years. Harassment and assault in school lead to anxiety about school, that goes without saying, stomach aches, leading to missing days of school. There was one study that was done where nearly half, it was actually 46% of trans students reported missing at least one school day within a 2-month time frame because they felt either physically or emotionally unsafe. So our schools have got to change as well. It's not enough for us to be supportive at home of these kids. It's a start, but we need everybody else to get on board as well. This is not going away. This is just gaining momentum as our society evolves and changes. And you're going to start seeing a whole lot more of these kids coming out and being more vocal. Now, last week I talked a lot about HB2, and I've had people say, how can I help? The easiest way you can help is to vote. And don't just vote, but vote informed. Really research who you're going to vote for and understand that the people that are in positions of power right now are the ones that are making discriminatory laws like HB2. So please vote these people out. They just have to go. So vote. It's important that you vote locally, of course, in the presidential election as well, but vote locally because we've really got to start changing things locally before it can spread out further. If anybody has any questions they would like to post right now, I'll be happy to answer them in the last 5 minutes or so. I did want to let you know that if you don't already follow my blog, you can. It is www.gendercreativelife.com. You can also find me on Facebook under the name Martie Sirois, MartieSirois, writer. That's my public page where I will post links to these videos. And pieces that I write will go there as well. Charlie also has a fan page. I think I mentioned that earlier, and it's just Charlie, the gender creative kid. Because so many people have been asking how they can send messages to him. And I'm not really comfortable with giving out our address, although people can find that if they really want to. But it was just easier to create a little fan page for him, and people can write into that and let him know their words of encouragement to him, and he does read them. He's moved to tears sometimes from the positive comments that he receives. Every little bit of support that he receives from one more person that's not mom or dad is a huge step forward. So chances are you have someone in your life who is on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. If you don't now, you will in the future. Trust me, the statistics prove it. It might be your kid. It might be your parent. It might be a sibling, a cousin, a friend, a coworker. They are in your life, and you do need to understand them so that you can support them, because there are real world consequences. I had someone that just wrote me this week saying that he had had 12 suicide attempts. He's in his 60s. He is now gender creative and he's open about being such. But 40 years ago, when it wasn't okay to be this way, or it wasn't, nobody was embracing it yet, he tried to kill himself 12 times. And he kind of joked around and said, fortunately, I wasn't very good at it, but that's a lot of times. Nobody should be made to feel so worthless that they have to take their own life because of how they were born. And yes, this is how these people are born. I have a ton of LGBTQ plus people in my life, between theater, which I've been doing for 35 plus years, volunteering with the LGBT Center, running my support group. I have a lot of people in this community that I work closely with. And every single one of them would tell you they did not choose to be gay, trans, bi, whatever, any more than you chose to be straight. At what point did you wake up and say, I think I'm going to be straight? Yeah, I'm going to choose to be straight. You don't choose it. It is what it is. It's part of your genetic makeup. It's who you are. So it's not a choice. And it's time that we start realizing that these people need the freedom to express their choice. They're not express their choice, excuse me, express their self, because it's not a choice. This is how they were born, and we need to get on board and embrace it. It's not okay to make someone feel bad or feel like they have to be brave just to be themselves. It's not okay to expect a child to be bullied just because they're going to try and live authentically. So we've got to get rid of that. And I need everyone's help. We all need to go out and do our part to educate others, to redefine, to take back some of this language that's being used against these people. I think that is about all that I have. Yeah, I like that, Elaine. A line from the play Mothers and Sons, which is going on at Raleigh Little Theater right now and receiving wonderful, wonderful reviews. Timothy Locklear has directed an amazing production. There's a line that says he wasn't gay in Texas. He turned gay when he moved to New York. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so a lot of gay people, you might think that they just woke up and chose it one day, but in all actuality, they've been in the closet their entire lives. They've been masking as a straight person. They've been masking as a cisgender person. And they hit rock bottom and realized that they couldn't be fake anymore. And so maybe they didn't come out until their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever. But that's probably the reason why. And a lot of them have contacted me and said that they're waiting for a parent to die before they can come out. That just shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be in this day and age. So if you want to follow my blog one last time, I will give the name. It is gender-creative-life.com, gender-creativelife.com, no spaces, gender-creative-life.com. I post all of my ramblings and all of my writings and my videos there. And if you're interested in getting more information about my support group called Search, Safe Environment for the Acceptance of Rainbow Children, contact me. Or I would say contact the LGBT Center, but they're inundated right now. Please don't. don't call them. You can contact me through them because we are a program of the LGBT Center. But it's search SEARCH at lgbtcenterofraleigh.com. That's the email. It will come directly to me. If you have questions or want more info, I'll be more than happy to hook you up with that. So I'm going to wrap it up there for tonight. I want to thank you all very much for joining me and letting me be a part of your life for almost 2 hours now. And the way Facebook Live works is that, yes, we are live right now, but anybody can go back and view this video afterwards. You can fast forward through it or whatever. It will be available on my writer page, on Charlie the Gender Creative Kids page, and on my blog. So it can be shared. It is public, so it can be shared. And I do attempt to answer all questions that are sent my way. So don't be shy. If you want to ask something, no topic is too taboo. Please contact me. If you're in crisis mode, I have a whole list of resources on my website. Suicide hotlines and more under the resources tab of gendercreativelife.com. I also have a page of common LGBTQ vocabulary that will maybe hopefully clarify some of the language that you may not be familiar with. So yeah, check it out because there's probably more information on there than I'm saying. But thank you again for joining me tonight. We're probably not going to be doing the Gender Creative 101 series weekly because I don't know that we're going to have enough material to do this weekly, but I will, for the short term, try to be doing it on a weekly basis. And I will be updating on Facebook as well when the next one will be and what the topic will be. So chime in with your questions because we do get a lot of material that we talk about from your questions. All right, thanks again. We love you. We appreciate you. And your support means more than we can express. So with that, I send you love, hugs, and rainbows, and have a good night. Good night.